welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing things a little bit differently. This is a super late video going up, and yeah, those pillows behind me. I'm filming in a little bit of a weird spot on my bed just because this is going to be more casual and I need to just get this video done because I did not film a September wrap up, but I don't want to leave you guys hanging on what I read in September. So let's get to that really quick. Okay. So yeah, I don't want to leave you guys hanging about what I read in September. So I have my list of all the books that I read. I'm not going to be holding up any books. There was quite a few ebooks, I think, but also just for time's sake, I didn't go like gather all my books up again. Sorry, if you really love the visual, I will promise to do this, get all the books in the future. I just didn't have time today. So I had one DNF, which you already know if you've seen the video. I DNF'd The Shadow Between Us. This book is in every way just not for me, and I'm going to do a more in-depth talk about morally gray characters and why the overuse and the blurring of the line between morally gray and villainous behavior is a real problem for me in YA and in general. But didn't like it. I don't think this was a morally gray character. This was a very corrupt character and, in my opinion, a villain. So I just could not get interested in her story or her plight or anything to do with her. So that was The Shadow Between Us. And then the first book that I finished and loved was Enchantment of Ravens. I know some people didn't like this as much as I did. I love both of the books by this author, which are Enchantment of Ravens and Sorcery of Thorns. I like them because they are YA, they're clean, you know, and I enjoy it. The romance is really sweet. The main characters are Isabel and Rook, and I like them both. It's about a girl who is a painter, and she paints portraits for the Fae, and she gets hired to paint one for the Crown Prince, or one of the Autumn Prince, I believe. And she paints something that she sees, and then there's problems. Something that she sees when she's painting him, and like sees something in his eyes, and then it shows up in her painting and causes a lot of issues. So I could see why people didn't love this book as much as I did, but I just thought it was fun. And there's a ton of books about the Fae that go down a much darker route, in my opinion, I just don't want to go there necessarily. But this one kept it to where the Fae are definitely very, like, I would say they're morally gray. You don't like get the sense that in this book, they don't have real emotion. They don't have human emotion at all. So I did like her treatment of the Fae in that way, and I did think it was very well written. The next book, Dangerous Alliance. So this was a book that's set in the time of the Regency era. It's very much influenced very heavily by Pride and Prejudice and books like that, and the author does reference those books directly because the main character has read Jane Austen's novels. So you definitely get the sense that the author wanted to write an Austen-inspired-ish book. This book is good. I enjoyed it. I liked that you kind of had that fun, like, what would Lizzie do aspect to this character. And overall, it did have much more, I will say, which tends to be the case with more modern Regency books. It tended to have much more intrigue, and the scandalous aspects were, you know, more scandalous than they would have been written about in the time of Jane Austen and the books like, you know, Pride and Prejudice. So I do really like it. I thought it was super fun, and I would recommend that one if you like that era and you want to read about, you know, that kind of fun, romantic Regency era novel that's going to have a lot of like Pride and Prejudice kind of flavor to it. I recommend. So the next book, Midnight Rose, is the last book in a series, and this one was fine. It's about it's kind of like a long, involved plot of like these like kind of gargoyle-ish creatures that are, you know, I don't even know how to explain. Oh, it's such a long... Anyway, it was fine. The book was fine. The wrap-up of it was fine. This is a series called, I believe, The Celestials by Emma Hamm. The whole series is kind of just okay. I was intrigued enough to finish it. I didn't think it was incredible. I liked some of the books more than the others. And I feel like there was a very loose fairy tale like aspect to each book, but the author didn't really want to commit to it being a fairy tale retelling, so you kind of just got like little bits of that, and I did enjoy it, but I almost wish it would have been more obvious because it just wasn't enough for me. I like fairy tale retellings a lot, but this one just seemed like the author didn't really want to commit to a full fairy tale retelling, so just like little bits here and there. But I did think it was fine. I mean, like, I wouldn't say don't read the series. I think it's definitely worth reading if you enjoy this author, and so far this has been my favorite series by her. I have DNF'd other books, but I did enjoy this one. Gold and Glacier. Now, this one was an author that I found off of Bookstagram, and this is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, which is hard to do. I have read only one really amazing Rumpelstiltskin retelling, which is by K.M. Shea, and this book is really good. I did not see the twist coming. There are things I didn't like, but were necessary, and the author really made me change my opinion about where it was all going about halfway through the book. So I was impressed. This is not a super popular, well-known author. I'll put all the info here, but I'd highly recommend, especially if you like fae. This one had a very interesting fae character, and I really liked how it all turned out. And I really liked that this didn't feel like it didn't feel like this author was indie, or like she, was, this is a first go around for her. It definitely felt like she was an established writer. She knew what she was doing with the story, and I thought that the way that she handled all of the different aspects, and how she brought in the elements of Rumpelstiltskin, but also her own original ideas for the fairy tale, were super interesting, and I thought very well done. So Gold and Glacier, I recommend. Then I read Speak. Gosh, I haven't thought about this for a while. Okay, so Speak. This is a very, very well-known, I'd say upper middle grade fiction. Most people read this in school, I think, and I did not, but this is like a 3-star read for me. The message of this book, extremely important, and I have heard that the movie is also very good, but there are just some very, very, very poorly handled stereotypes in this book. And I do think this was written maybe in the late 90s or something. I'll have to look at the exact publishing date, but there's very strong, in my opinion, slut shaming. The cheerleaders are the author is a teenager, and you're seeing it from, like, the main character is a teenager. You're obviously seeing things from her perspective, but the jocks are, every character except for the main character is extremely one-dimensional. You do not get, like, jocks, evil, stupid, cheerleaders, evil, slutty. Like, there's not anywhere for that to go. You're getting high school in such a very stereotypical way, and it leaves no nuance whatsoever for any of the characters except for the main character. And I really didn't like it. I mean, you had the very, like, jerk teacher that was just so overdone, in my opinion. And then, of course, contrasted to the very, like, wonderful, just amazing art teacher. And it was just, like, I was in high school. Nothing is ever that black and white. But the author really, really relied very, very heavily on just a stereotypical jock, a stereotypical, cheerleader, a stereotypical bad teacher. And yeah, I had bad teachers, but legit never experienced, like, even in college, anywhere near the level of, like, whoa, that's out of line from a teacher. And it hurt the overall narrative for me, because I kept thinking, that doesn't make sense. That's not realistic. And the story is going for a very realistic feel. This is not this is not fantasy. This is about a girl who, if you don't want spoilers, stop watching. Skip ahead. So she has been sexually assaulted at a party, and she has stopped speaking. Not completely, but she's just slowly talked less and less. She doesn't think anyone is going to listen to her anyway, and she's very much drawing herself inward. And so you're going through her day-to-day life, going to high school. This book is broken up into, like, the semester periods, and so you see, like, fall semester, spring semester, and the book is fine. But for such a very, like, important topic, I would have appreciated more nuance. I just didn't think was handled perfectly. It's not a perfect book, but it is a good one, and I would still recommend it for the appropriate age. The next book that I read that I thought handled teenage experience and a difficult topic really well was Forget Me Not. This book is just, I thought, really, really, really well written. And the main character has Tourette's, and she writes all of her stuff in verse, and the other character is written all in prose. And it really showed the difference in the characters and the way that her, having Tourette's affected her and how her thought process and everything. And it was beautifully written. I love the friendship. I love the relationship aspects to it. It's, showing a high school, or she might have been middle school experience that seemed much more real and realistic. And definitely, like, in dealing with a difficult topic, dealt with it really well. And I would highly recommend. It was just a super sweet story. And it was 5-star read for me. I thought it was great. I thought the author really came at that topic with an interesting look at it. And the overall relationship between the two main characters definitely had an Eleanor and Park feel to it, but definitely toned down to appropriate, middle grade level. So, highly recommend. The next one, Lurking in the Woods, is by the same author as Golden Glacier. This one wasn't as good to me as Golden Glacier, and I read Lurking in the Woods and Wading in the Water, which were book 1 and 2 of the Beyond the Veil series. And they were fine. Nothing wrong with them. They're fantasy, and overall enjoyable, but I would say they didn't have the strong lore and originality of the Golden Glacier story. They seemed much more like, I wouldn't even say first drafts, but they seemed less fleshed out as far as the characters. But they were fine. Like I said, nothing. The first one is about a girl who goes out and lives in the woods. She gets, I think, inherits a property, and then she lives right by this wood that's inhabited by a bunch of magical creatures, and comes in contact with a werewolf, who then shows her what's going on in this forest. And of course, stuff happens. But the second one was a mermaid one. I did feel like there was some slow parts in the middle of this one, but it was fine. It was overall enjoyed both. They weren't amazing, but they are fun fairy tales, and both original fairy tales, I believe. So the next book I read was Meet Hattie, which total nostalgia read. I'll put it here. It's just I read these books when I was a kid, and I just thought, hey, I wonder what they're about. But one thing that I do appreciate about these books, they're talking about a time that most of us don't ever think about. And one thing that it brought up that I had actually Googled, and I love things like make me think, was the girl getting a dress made from a flour sack. And she goes in, and they're going to get flour, and she gets to pick the print because they are going to use that flour sack later to make her dress for school. This was something that happened, and I love that. It's something that we would never think about, but flour companies realized that people were doing this, and they made flour sacks and all these various prints for men and women and babies so that they could reuse this fabric to make clothes. And back in the time where, Great Depression era kind of stuff, you had to have that resourcefulness. And so this book starts out with her going and getting a lavender print flour sack to make her dress. And I just, right here, I'm just that's sad, but amazing that she was just so happy to have, a lavender print for her dress, and from a flour sack. That's the life back then. And I did think this book dealt with some issues as far as family, as far as friendship. It was very sweet. And yeah, I say it's probably for younger, even, than middle grade. It's maybe 7 years old, 8 years old. But yeah, this Meet Hattie, it was a book I read when I was a kid. I got the series and had to just start rereading. So the last book that I read was Daddy Long Legs, and I did really like this book. But this book starts out with a girl who is works at an orphanage, and she gets a sponsor. Basically, she wants to go to college, and a guy comes to sponsor her, and she doesn't know who it is. It's anonymous, but he just asks that she write him letters to let her know how she's doing in college. So she calls him Daddy Longlegs. There's a whole reason behind it. I'm not going to get into the whole thing. But it's funny because it's obviously going in a romantic way. And she's young. You know, she's a young girl starting college. And then there's this much older guy. And and they do meet. It's not all through letters. But if I thought about it, I might be bothered. If I like thought about it and really went into the whole like older versus younger and was, you know, their influence there and all that, yes, it could be problematic. But I'm gonna just go with it's not it's like back then that did happen a lot, and a girl who went to college was, you know, I mean, that's really good that she had that desire, and it's really played up in the book of her being very ambitious. And I liked her character. She reminded me a little bit of Anne with her writing style. She's very like fun and adventurous and has this imagination, and she's super cute. And then the guy, you don't see much of him, but what you do, I mean, he seemed like a fine guy. You know, he really cared about her. He really wanted to, you know, help her. And, you know, of course, then they have this falling in love relationship. And I, like I said, you can be offended by it, but I'm not looking at this with a modern lens. I don't do that. I try very hard not to, because this book wasn't written for me in 2020. This book was written a while ago, and there's a movie and all that based on it, and I just like to look at it for what the intention was then, which was to write a cute story about a girl who gets to go to college. She's a wonderful, smart, talented lady, and then she meets the love of her life through these letters. I think you can look at it and just say, that's a sweet story. And back then, this would not have been uncommon. The age difference would not have been a big deal. I know you can overthink that one, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to. And I thought it was fine. The book was cute, very short read. The letters, but like, she's only writing to him. He doesn't really write back. But her letters were really adorable, and I liked her as a character. I thought for a very one-sided story, because you're obviously just seeing her, it was pretty well done. So overall, that is my reading for September. I apologize for this very late video, but I had a road trip in the beginning of October that prevented me from filming, and then I got sick. But I don't have COVID, so that's good. And I'm going to try and be filming more regularly. So I'd love to know what you read in September and what you're reading in October. And just talk to me in the comments, because I like to talk about books. You can find me on Bookstagram at Gwendolyn Ransom on Instagram. Please like and subscribe, and I'd like to talk to you more in the comments.